Next, where are you? Come on, Joel. One of the information architects, the wonderful chapter in the book, very black pages. Joel and I worked together in Philadelphia when I had an architectural office for about 5 years, did a bunch of books together. The Nature of Recreation downstairs and several others. Joel Katz. Make it as quick as you can, no more problem.
If you need a low-tech antidote to get to break, I'm it. I want to thank Richard for inviting me to be one of the contributors to the book. First I want to say I got a phone message from my 14-year-old son during the last break. He said, "Dad, I know you'll be great, but if you're not, it's only 15 minutes." So I'm grateful to Richard and being here for two reasons. Not just being here, but for the information I had the excuse or the motivation, the privilege to learn, and then to see the work of all my colleagues, the extraordinary work of all my colleagues in this book. So I now know that if I get the opportunity to do it again, I'll be able to do it better. My job as an information designer is to communicate. And in order to communicate, I need to understand what it is I'm trying to explain to others. And as people who have spoken before me have said, that's not always as easy as it sounds. When Disraeli said that there were lies, damn lies, and statistics, he knew what he was talking about. So I got a lot of surprises, and before I show my little low-tech slideshow, I'd like to tell you what some of those surprises were. I got a lot of my surprises from the information itself, and I'll get back to those later. But the biggest surprises had to do with the form in which most ordinary people get to look at data. For example, the Statistical Abstract of the United States, from which I got a lot of my material, and other sources as well, second-party, third-generation sources. Too many numbers are in current dollars instead of constant dollars, thereby wiping out all effects of inflation and totally skewing the information. So for the pieces I did in my section of the book, I had to do a lot of that math myself, which is, I assure you, very dangerous. Another problem is that almost none of the numbers are adjusted in any way for population growth. There is very little per capita data out there. It is just big gross individual numbers, big gross dollar numbers. There's really no way to understand what's happening to the individual or the individuals in a group or groups within a state or states within our nation. And finally, there's what I started calling the Hispanic issue. And I thought that because it was around for me to discover or to run into, that I must have been the first person to have it occur to me. But the second-year graduate student in demography at the University of Pennsylvania that I hired said that she had been working on it for her entire first year of graduate school. And without spending a lot of time, which we don't have, boring you with data compilation issues of the 1990 census, which we hope won't be with us much longer, suffice it to say that in, for example, poverty, any way of presenting data that makes it possible for people to think that whites have an 11% poverty rate when in fact they have an 8% poverty rate, a difference of 40%, is a way of presenting data that would probably benefit from a little re-examination. Because finally, not to be politically paranoid, What it does is if you compare an 11% poverty rate of whites to a 25% poverty rate of blacks, that disparity is a lot smaller than if you were really comparing an 8% poverty rate among whites to a 25% poverty rate among blacks. So there is, in the way we most easily, the non-professionals among us, the lay people, the students doing reports for school, get their data that is prone to terrible, terrible misinterpretation. Brand might have said that the best conclusion from wrong numbers is not much good. So some of the surprises from the data that I got, I'll just share with you very briefly in case you were surprised too. Some of them have come up before in the last day and a half. The increasing rise in the cost of higher education by any measure with any adjustment against all other indices. Our almost non-existent rate of savings, the incredible increase in mutual funds, which I'm sure this audience knows about, the concentration of so much of our country's wealth in the hands of so few of us, the increasing number of our elderly population, and their significantly changing ethnicity, the declining ratio of workers to beneficiaries for the Social Security program, the number of young who are poor, 20%, that foreign-born citizens who have been naturalized have a lower poverty rate than native-born Americans, and the amazing growth of single-parent households headed by males. And last but not least, the cost of living in San Francisco. What I learned from the understanding experience that is most important to me is my discovery of how full of emotion numbers can be. The numbers that were most meaningful to me, that send the shiver up the back, the hairs on the neck, were all relating to poverty, having to do with gender issues, age issues, racial issues, ethnic issues. Because behind all those numbers are people, and people who have been deprived of income or of education or of housing. Those are individual lives that are diminished and individual opportunities for fulfilling lives that have been lost. Because finally the numbers are symbols of real human beings who have lives and loves and misfortunes. So to share with you the issue, the situation that moved me most, I made a dumb little slideshow. And it was my attempt to communicate the emotion behind the numbers that I feel. Because I never learned how to walk and chew gum at the same time, it has no sound. But I know that all of you can read. You can turn the house lights down, please. Thank you very much.